Welcome to HortTube. My name is Putnam. In this video, we're going to bounce around and see some of the things that are still blooming in the Raleigh garden. We're very thankful to be back home in Raleigh. We've been on the road for 6 or 7 weeks. Just shot a bunch of content at Verde Nurseries in Southern California, and those videos will be up pretty soon. But I wanted to get back home ahead of some pretty tough freezes we're going to have this next week, stuff down in the lower 20s, and we really haven't just had hardly any frost, very minor frost that have knocked back a couple of the annuals out here, but hasn't slowed anything else down, and we're gonna just jump right down to the low 20s. So that's really gonna shut the garden down at this point, but there's some stuff that's just really held on and is looking fantastic, starting with a few of these camellias out here, including this white shishi camellia. Steph isn't here to help me film this morning, so I'm going to turn the camera around the other way and walk around and show you some of the things that are still looking great here in the Raleigh garden. The North Carolina State Fair is about the third week of October every year, and it's right up the street from me in Raleigh. And typically in the past, that was kind of our average first frost. We would get at least the threat of a frost that third week of October, and it's just moved back further and further and further over time. You know, we might flirt with it one night, but rarely do we have one now before December, which does leave you vulnerable for plants going to sleep really kind of very ugly. You know, where they, it goes from they're still blooming, like this pineapple sage, which is, this is a fall bloomer. Not surprising at all that it was blooming, during the fall months. But typically it's going to be September, October, maybe to early November, but it's still full on putting on growth. We're still having nights in the 50s, and daytime temperatures, well above that. And so the thing's still growing, and it's definitely going to get slammed to the ground here in the next few days. It'll be all right. It's well established enough that that's okay. The root system is well established on it. But if it wasn't, and this was the first year in the ground, it would be really, really vulnerable to dying from that type of episode, where it goes down to 20 degrees from not having a frost on it. This is that white shishi camellia that I was squatting behind when the video started. I want to get up close on this one. Look at that double white flower. It's unbelievable how nice this white shishi Camellia sasanqua is, and it's absolutely loaded with buds. What'll happen with it is all the open flowers will get they'll brown when it goes down in the 20s, but these closed flower buds that are on it, as long as they're not open, they'll open up afterwards. Some are partially open, and those are going to get damaged, but others will be fine. When you get to the other side of this freeze, they'll start opening again. And the one to the left of it is that light pink shishi. These are really super compact growers that, kind of a spreading habit on both of them. They're 3 years in the ground at this point, and that white shishi is maybe 3 feet tall at this point, but 3 to 4 feet in width. And I can keep it whatever height I want to keep it, but it is absolutely loaded with flower buds back there. But it's going to take a break from blooming for sure. There are a few of these skyscraper. This is skyscraper pink salvia that's still flowering out here. Lots of the gomphrena is still in full flower, and we'll see one that's really just spectacular on the other side. Several of the salvias are still blooming. Gomphrena again, still in full bloom. You can see the minor frost that we had a few nights ago knocked these vinca back. So I was able to see on the camera while we were gone that these vinca were blooming up until a week or so ago. But that little bit of that little frost that's on them, where you can see the burned tips, that ended that. And of course, they're just going to be killed here when we get some real cold in the next few days. But here's that skyscraper salvia. There's different colors of these skyscraper salvias. There's red and pink and others, and then pink one there. Still full bloom, so I would imagine if there was any pollinators have been around, or any lingering hummingbirds or anything like that, they've been working on those. And then, of course, as everything goes to sleep out here, we're going to be moving some things around in the next few weeks, and you'll see that content. Once the leaves are off of this calocarpa right here, it's going to move. The clethra that's behind, that's in the middle of the screen there, above the abelia, that's going to move. But you see, now that everything's going to sleep, these variegated gold plants, you know, they really start to shine in the garden once this vinca is killed completely back. That nightlight Chamaecyparis right there, that thing will really, really shine. So let's jump around and see some other things. A lot of leaves have fallen off the trees since we've been gone, so that's something we'll you know, have to clean up here in the next few days. I'll probably make some content here related to getting the garden back under control, especially when things like the summer jewel salvia get killed back finally in the next few nights. Lantana is still blooming, you know, almost December here in Raleigh. This wouldn't be unusual down in Florida, of course, but up here, or in, you know, in California, they're full bloom this time of year. But here, it's definitely late to have lantana blooming. You see the driveway is an absolute mess from leaves and everything else, but I'll show you these summer jewel salvia will get seedy. So low spot on the driveway, and there they are blooming in the driveway, which I'll get out here and clean this up. But the summer jewel salvia will seed themselves a bit around the garden. They're easy to, they're easy to tame, easy to control. I mean, easy to dig out if they do seed themselves, but just to let you know, they will. The blueberries have great fall color on them right now. Looking forward to getting all this cleaned up, but I wanted to show it off before we actually got some real cold out here that was going to knock everything back. And of course, this fireworks gomphrena is just absolutely incredible. It's still, you're still doing this at, right at, on Thanksgiving Day, which is a late Thanksgiving this year, on the 28th. The autumn moonstruck azalea, the variegated encore azalea, I think you can see that variegation right there, has been blooming, looks like, for a while since I left, and it still has a ton of flower buds on it. It will knock the rest of those back, but you can see it's the spent flowers on it at this point. But this one flowers white, and of course it's spring and fall flowering. Any buds that are left on it from this opening in the fall, any of them that are still tight on there, they'll bloom in the spring. Brought a few plants back that I'll have to protect here in the next few nights from California. That angel wings senecio right there, what a cool plant. The euphorbia that we'll talk about in a video at some point, and a kind of a tropical ivy. It's a variegated ivy right there. It's not a cold, super cold hardy one, but really beautiful variegation on that one. Not a big ivy fan for sure, but the variegated ones like that tend to grow a little bit slower, and we'll probably just use it as a container plant. The back garden is covered in leaves, in a mess, and I'm going to put up some sort of content about cleaning up back here. We keep all the leaves in place, but I won't allow them, on the paths like this. I'll get the paths cleaned up, and we'll mulch some of them on the driveway, as there's still a lot more. The tree, I frequently talk about this giant oak that just kind of dominates this back garden. It's not on this property. It's on a neighboring property back there, but it does dominate this space, and almost every leaf that you see on the ground in this video, the rest of this video, come off of that tree, and it's still got a ton of leaves up there to go. So I'll get in here and clean up the paths, maybe chop up a few leaves here or there, or knock some off some plants, but I'm not going to go all in cleaning it up, nor am I going to do what two of my next door neighbors did yesterday, which was run blowers for 4 or 5 hours each. I could have raked their entire gardens in that amount of time with a leaf rake. Pomegranate blooming at an odd time for sure. This is this kind of year we're having, as things are blooming at odd times for sure. Looking over here, I'm seeing that the African basil, which is an annual for us, really, it's a perennial basil, and it doesn't it's sterile, so you can't really do this one from seed. It has to be done from cutting and carried over year to year. We typically, this is one plant, and it's become 3.5 feet tall and 4 feet wide in a single season. We made the mistake of planting a bunch of these one year, and they can just take over the garden completely. One of the best pollinator plants we have, but generally has been killed back by this time of the fall. It's pretty abnormal to have it still flowering like this. I think you can see that, close up there. Still basically full flower. It's off colored a bit. That little bit of frost we've gotten, some of the lower temperatures are putting it, are knocking it doesn't look as fresh as it did, but to a pollinator on a warm day, it's just absolutely perfect out here. Except, again, in a few nights it'll get killed. I'll get back here in a few days and knock all the leaves off of things with a rake. I just want to get them down to the ground, basically, and that's where they can stay for the winter. Again, these chartreuse color things really start to shine right in this time of year. Variegated Mojo Pittosporum down there below it, and they really shine, especially against this darker leaves that are on the ground. This coleus continues to be a star. It won't be in a couple of days for sure. That thing will be toast at 21 degrees, but still looks pretty good, right? It's been one of the stars of the garden this year. This one's Alabama Sunset Coleus. It flowered here after we left on the trip. It didn't flower until late, which is another great thing. These Coleus, I like the flowers on them. They're good pollinator plants, but when they flower, they tends to slow the growth down of the foliage, which the foliage is the attractive part of the plant. So, the later they flower, the better. So that's one thing that breeders are selecting for, is to have the flowers much, much later in the season. That way the plant gets big and bold in the garden. October Magic Ruby, I think that little bit of frost we got the other night knocked some of these flowers back, and you can see the plant is just absolutely full of leaves. I'll pull those out with a rake, no problem. Same thing with the Mojo Pittosporum. Again, pull a rake across the top of them. The Marvel Mahonia is about to come into flower. These things get these are small in comparison to what they'll be. They'll continue to stretch out here. Don't know what 21 degrees is going to do to them. This is a little early for them to flower. I've got some more flowers coming later, so I think regardless, I'll end up with some flowers. And there's some open flowers on them already, and I imagine the pollinators are taking advantage of that. But I think these open flowers, low 20s, is probably going to damage, any open flower that's on it. Still got, hosta and pulmonaria and all kinds of, farfugium and all kinds of, acanthus right here. Lots of the perennials in the garden have yet to be knocked back at all. We just haven't had any of that kind of cold. Another Camellia sasanqua there. But all of these things are going to go, again, they're going to go to sleep in an ugly way, but if they're well established, it won't hurt them at all. The calla lily will definitely get knocked back in the next few nights, but I had cut this thing back hard just to kind of get it under control, because it's eating this bed. It's eating a camellia, and it's in, adjoining, it's eating a gardenia right there, a butterfly bush that's behind it. Just think this grows so fast, but again, it's going to just be mush on a 20 degree night, but it comes right back from that. Well, first of all, the Chinese snowball viburnum has still got some flowers on it. Almost December here. If I can focus in on that, you see that one flower cluster. They're still small on this plant because this plant's not very big, but those clusters of flowers get much, much larger than that in the future. But still to be blooming at almost December. Pretty typical. The Osmanthus fragrans still flowering. I can focus on those right there. Really small, super, super, super fragrant flowers. Hits 20 degrees, it's just going to absolutely stop it in its tracks from blooming. And then as soon as it warms back up on the other side of winter, any flower buds that are still available on it will open up at that point. Typically the majority of the flowering though does occur in the fall on these, but then again they'll have some residuals on the other side of the winter. The patio and other areas in the garden are just a mess. You know, I just coming home to this, walking around with the camera to show you that, you know, this is what it looks like. It won't take, but it doesn't take that long to clean it up though. The windmill palm really put on a lot of growth this year. I mean, I'm blown away. This is 4th year in the ground for this thing, and in the last, I would say that in the last 2 months, it really put on some growth. And we measure palms from the actual like woody part of the palm down. And when I put this one in the ground, it was only about 1 foot tall. And now the palm itself is about 5 feet. It's got fronds that are, you know, it's got parts of the palm are 9 feet tall now, but the actual palm is somewhere right around 5 feet. And you can see the diameter of it down toward the base now. I think that'll be clear enough to see. It's finally going to allow me to cut off the lower pieces on it, and I'll be able to walk around it, which has been the point of this thing. It's been kind of a shrub for 4 years, and it's just in your face, you know, but I'm now gonna be able to limb it up and get it out of my, get it out of the way and have it be the tall kind of corner piece for this porch that I've wanted it to be. Let's find something else that's interesting back here. All of the lake series of salvias are still blooming as well. All of these are lake something, and you can look up the lake series of, we went through all of these varieties in a series of videos not that long ago, but every single one of them is still flowering. These are perennial here in the area. We went with perennial salvia around the patio. They're rough looking. I mean, it's this, but you know, it's more about like they're still blooming in December. I thought they would have been killed back completely at this point, and they haven't been. So that's the interesting part of this. Not that they're looking great, but you know, the pollinators have been able to take advantage of it. Here's one that's pretty interesting. Hydrangea with, you know, looking rough, of course, because it's about to go to sleep, but truly, truly remontant. This one's called Dear Dolores, and it has been truly, unbelievably remontant. This is the 3rd round of flowers on it this year. Bloomed heavily twice, you know, and then it's just an absolutely fantastic plant. I learned some of the history of this one not that long ago, and I hope to get down and pay a visit on this one at some point and have a conversation about it. But I don't think there's a better remontant hydrangea macrophylla. Remontant means it blooms on old wood and new wood. It just means that it blooms in the spring to early summer, just like all the other hydrangea macs, but then it has the ability to put on new growth, form new flower buds that same season, and flower again. And here we are. It's going to be December 1st, and this one's still in flower because of that remontant ability that it has. Let's see, anything else back here we want to take a look at? I will say that this screenplay holly has really, really jumped. Finally, it was, I don't say finally, I mean, it's grown pretty quick, but this is a tough neighborhood back here with this oak behind it, and it's pretty dry. Don't get any additional water back to this corner really. And this thing, it's got a leader on it up there that's 10 feet tall. I'll cut that back, but the mass, the bulk of the plant now is at about 5 to 6 feet tall. So I think screenplay is the perfect name for this holly. I think they're going to be super, super, super popular. And I'll show you, it was absolutely loaded with berries before we left, and I think the birds may have taken some, or some have dropped off, but there were a ton on it, and such a young plant. That's pretty unusual at this point. So anyway, this is thankful to be back in the Raleigh garden video. We're going to get in here and get this cleaned up in the next few days, and I'll show you that. I'll show you that content. We've got some plants we're going to be moving around. We're actually, hopefully, going to be expanding the garden as well, and that's some news that I'll have upcoming. And we don't let any material leave this property, any organic material leave this property. So all of these leaves will be put to good use in video content coming up as well. So thank you guys so much for following along with the channel.